Sometimes the hardest relationship breakups in your whole entire life won't be romantic. They'll be friendships. They won't be dramatic. It won't be a screaming match or a blocked number moment. Honestly, it's worse. It's just quiet. It's where you slowly realize the person who once felt like home now feels a little uncomfortable to be around. The jokes don't land the same, the support feels conditional, and the version of you that exists today doesn't quite fit in the space where the friendship used to live. And no one's to blame. Friendship breakups are extremely weird. There's no we're done, no like final goodbye, no unfollow party. It's just you slowly moving in a different direction and realizing, hey, we're not really friends anymore. And that realization is uncomfortable because this isn't a random person, right? This is someone who knew you when you were 8 and just a little silly kid, or 13 and growing up, or 18 and insecure, or 22 and completely wild, or 30 and heartbroken trying to figure it all out. Now you're however old and healing and more self-aware and trying to protect your peace. And suddenly the energy feels different. Maybe it's competitive or mean or draining or just not compatible. And then you start asking, am I overthinking this? Or is this just what growing up feels like? So welcome back to Chasing Stability. Today we're talking all about something that feels small until really it's just not. I'm calling it the friendship edit because at this point in life, you realize not everyone is meant to be a lifelong person. Some people were a season, some people were a lesson, some were a comfort, and some were just mean. And yes, we're going to talk about all of them. Because editing your friendships doesn't make you cold. It makes you aware, and it means you're growing up. It'd be a lie for me to sit here and say I didn't struggle with this idea, because I did, and a lot, honestly. So let's just dive in. Time doesn't just pass. It honestly edits you. The version of you at 19 was different. It had different fears, different standards, different humor, different tolerance, and friendships form around shared seasons. College chaos, first apartments, bad relationships, elementary school, life locations, late night survival mode, figuring it out together. But then life shifts. Some of you get serious about healing. Some of you get married. Some have kids. Some move cities. Some stop partying. Some start therapy. Some get sick. Some find faith. Some chase careers. Some slow down. And suddenly, the thing that bonded you isn't the thing that bonds you anymore. That doesn't make anyone wrong. It just means the context changed. And context is extremely powerful. I've had to sit with this one personally a lot, realizing that some friendships didn't work because you were perfectly matched. They worked because we were in the same place, same town, same stage of life, same routines. We saw each other all the time. So the friendship just existed naturally. But when life starts moving and people start growing in different directions, sometimes you realize the thing holding the friendship together was just proximity. And that shift can feel isolating because you don't hate the person, right? You're not angry. You just started to feel different. It's not dramatic in like an obvious way. It's in the subtle ways. You notice you leave certain conversations feeling a little smaller than when you arrived. You catch yourself filtering what you say more than you used to, explaining yourself more, defending yourself more. And that's when you realize something quietly shifted without you noticing. The proximity that once held the friendship together isn't there anymore. So the differences start pouring out because time doesn't just mature you, it clarifies you. And clarity has a way of making misalignment impossible to ignore. That's the part that really hits in your 30s. You start valuing peace more than popularity, depth more than proximity, consistency more than shared history. And not everyone is meant to grow in the same direction as you. Sometimes the friendship didn't fail, it just finished the chapter it was meant to live in. Sometimes the strongest part about this realization isn't anger, it's awareness. Because once you see the friendship clearly, you can't really go back to the version of it that you used to believe in. You start noticing little things that didn't stand out before. You know what I mean? Like conversations that feel slightly off. Those comments that land a little sharper than they used to. Moments where you realize you're shrinking parts of yourself just to keep things comfortable for everyone involved. And it's confusing because nothing huge has happened. There's not like a moment that you can pinpoint. There's no dramatic story to like point at. No big betrayal, no screaming match, no moment where you can say, that's exactly when everything changed. Instead, it's just a slow awareness that something about this dynamic doesn't feel the same anymore. And sometimes the hardest part is admitting that out loud. Because friendships come with history, years of memories, inside jokes that nobody else would understand, versions of you that only existed in that friendship. So you start questioning yourself. Am I overthinking this? Am I being sensitive? Am I expecting too much from this friendship? But what you're actually experiencing most of the time isn't overthinking, it's clarity. And clarity can feel uncomfortable when it shows you something you didn't want to see. Because once you recognize a dynamic isn't healthy for you anymore, you have a choice. You either ignore it and stay in the awkward in between, or you start adjusting your life around the truth. And that's where the real emotional work begins. And it's also where things start to get complicated emotionally, because friendship shifts don't just affect the relationship, they affect how you see yourself. At least they did for me. I struggled with this a lot, not just the realization that certain friendships were changing, but the feeling that maybe I was the problem. Like maybe I wasn't being a good friend. Maybe I was becoming too distant. Maybe I was changing too much. Maybe I was too serious or getting too serious or becoming too difficult or too different. Maybe I was the one abandoning something that was supposed to last. And those thoughts can sit with you for a while. Because loyalty is something most of us were raised to value in friendships. We're supposed to stick by our people. You're supposed to show up. You're supposed to ride things out and be there for them. So when a friendship starts to feel misaligned, the first instinct isn't usually clarity, it's guilt. You start replaying all these memories in your head, all the good moments, the laughter, the nights you needed each other, the versions of yourselves that grew up side by side. And it can feel almost disloyal to admit that something about the friendship doesn't fit the same anymore. Like you're betraying the history. But what I've realized, and honestly, it took me a long time to accept it, is that feeling conflicted about friendships changing doesn't mean you're a bad friend. It means you care. It means the relationship mattered to you. If anything, the discomfort you feel when friendships shift is proof that you valued the connection way more than you maybe believed you did. But caring about someone and being aligned with someone are not always the same thing. And that's a really hard truth to swallow, because sometimes there isn't a villain in the story. Nobody did anything terrible. Nobody betrayed anyone. Life just moved people in different directions. Priorities changed. Values sharpened. Energy shifted. and suddenly you're not standing in the same place you used to be. That doesn't make either person wrong, but it can still hurt because friendships hold pieces of your identity. You know what I mean? They hold versions of yourself that existed in specific seasons. The version of you that laughed the hardest with that person and that person alone. The version of you that got through a rough time with them and only they know that person. The version of you that built routines and memories and comfort inside that connection. So when a friendship changes, it doesn't just feel like losing a person. Sometimes it feels like losing a chapter of yourself. And that's why people hold on longer than they probably should. Because letting go doesn't just mean letting go of the friend, right? It means accepting that a version of your life that you once loved so much is finished. And that can be surprisingly emotional. But here's the part that helps me the most when I started working through this idea myself. Friendship shifts are not always a failure. Sometimes they're simply a reflection of growth. That's it. Growth doesn't just add things to your life. Sometimes it rearranges them. Sometimes it changes the environment around you. And sometimes it changes the relationships that fit into the life that you're building now. And none of that means you're disloyal. It just means you're paying attention to where your life is actually going. I remember when this really started hitting me in my own life, okay? There were friendships I had held on to for years, people that I loved and I still love, people I had real memories with, people I knew huge chapters of my life, and nothing dramatic had happened. There's not a betrayal, there's no big fight, nothing like that. But slowly I started noticing that when I left certain interactions, I didn't feel so great anymore. Not in like this big, like, oh my gosh, they were so mean to me kind of way, just this like subtle heaviness. Like I was explaining myself more than I was being understood. Like I was editing parts of myself just to keep things normal. Like the version of me that was trying to grow didn't quite fit in the space that friendship had stayed in. And that realization messed with me for a while because my first instinct wasn't maybe this friendship has changed. My first instinct was maybe I'm not being a good friend. Maybe I'm pulling away too much because of my illness. Maybe I'm expecting too much from them. Maybe I am being selfish. Maybe I'm the one making things complicated. I questioned myself a lot during that time. And I think that's something people don't talk about enough when friendships shift. You don't just grieve the friendship. You question your own character. Am I loyal enough? Am I patient enough? Am I abandoning someone that was supposed to be in my life forever? Or not really abandoning, but like letting things change. But eventually I realized something important. Feeling misaligned with a friendship doesn't automatically make you this like horrible person. Sometimes it just means you've grown into a version of yourself that needs different energy around you and vice versa. And that realization is exactly what I mean when I talk about the friendship edit. Because the friendship edit isn't about cutting people off or becoming cold or becoming distant and mean and weird. It's about awareness. It's about looking honestly at your relationships in your life and asking yourself, does this feel supportive? Does this feel safe? Does this feel aligned with the person that I am striving to become? And sometimes the answer is yes. Sometimes the friendship grows with you. It deepens, it evolves. And sometimes the answer is more complicated than that. Sometimes the friendship just belongs to a different chapter in your life. And the edit doesn't mean erasing that person from your life or your past or pretending that those memories don't matter or like you're never going to talk to this person again. It just means adjusting the role that they play in your life now? Less access, less emotional, more boundaries. Not because you hate them, but because you're learning to build a life that reflects who you are today, not just who you used to be when you were a kid or a young adult or whatever. So then something interesting happens when you finally accept that friendships can change and it's okay. You stop fighting the reality of it so much. For a long time, I think we try to force friendships to stay exactly the way they were. We try harder, we overlook things, we explain things away. We tell ourselves it's just a phase because the alternative feels like almost a loss. But once you accept that some friendships belong to a specific chapter, something else starts to shift in a different way. You feel lighter. You stop trying to convince people to understand you. You stop over explaining yourself. You stop bending parts of your life just to maintain something that doesn't feel natural anymore. And suddenly your relationships start to feel different, quieter, more supportive, less performative, less complicated, less over explaining, just more understood. Because when you stop forcing the wrong dynamics to stay, you create space for the right ones to grow. And the friendships that truly belong in your life now, they feel safe in a different way. Not effortless, right? Like you always have to work in relationships, but aligned. You don't have to shrink to keep them comfortable. You don't have to filter yourself to keep the peace. You don't leave feeling drained. You leave feeling understood and lifted and brightened. And that's when you realize the edit wasn't about losing people. It was about finding the people who actually fit into your life now. You know, we all remember hearing the famous line growing up, like from our parents all the time, or other adults or whoever it may be, right? If you can count your real friends on one hand, you're lucky. And when you're younger, that sounds kind of like depressing almost, you know? You're like, wait, what? 5 friends? What do you mean? That's it? Like, that's pretty sad. Because when you're younger, your world feels full of people, school friends, sports friends, then college friends, coworkers, roommates, random people who become part of your life that you meet out drunk just because you're all in the same place and going through the same thing. Your circle feels huge. But the older you get, the more you start to understand what people meant by that. Because life starts editing things naturally. People move, priorities change. Some friendships grow deeper, some fade out. And eventually you look around and realize your circle did get smaller. Not because you failed at like friendship or anything, but because the relationships that actually fit your life now are fewer, but they're much stronger. And suddenly that thing people used to say doesn't sound so depressing anymore. It sounds pretty accurate. You know, the truth of the matter is friendship edits happen to everyone. They're just one of those quieter parts of growing up. You start life surrounded by people who share your environment. School, neighborhoods, college, early adulthood chaos. But as life expands, your world becomes more intentional. Your time becomes more valuable. Your peace becomes more protected. Your relationships become more selective. And that shift is not cold. It's maturity. Not every friendship was meant to last forever, okay? Some were just meant to teach you something. Some were meant to carry you through a difficult season. Some were meant to reflect who you were at that time. And some are meant to walk beside you forever. So if you're in a season where your friendships feel like they're shifting, I want you to know something. You're not a bad friend. You're not disloyal. You're not difficult. You're just growing. And growth has a way of rearranging the people around you, sometimes quietly and sometimes quite painfully, but usually with a purpose. And that's where I'm going to leave you today. So if this episode felt familiar, you're definitely not the only one navigating a friendship edit in this world. Send this to someone who might be in the same season as you. Not to stir anything up, but just to remind them that growing up comes with these shifts naturally. Make sure you're following Chasing Stability wherever you are listening right now so you don't miss what's coming up next. We've got plenty more honest conversations coming your way. So move through the rest of your week choosing alignment, protecting your peace, and honoring your growth. This is Chasing Stability, and I will meet you in the in-between next Tuesday.